So hello everyone, welcome to the another SQL or the structured query language tutorial. So in our last video we discussed about the introduction to SQL part. That means why you should learn SQL and what are the benefits you'll be getting after learning SQL and what are the career path or what are the career opportunities in this specific field. So if you missed that our previous video, then no issues, we'll be putting the link to our previous video in the description of this video. You can click on that link and you can watch the previous video, right? So as we discussed earlier, today we'll be discussing about the few of the basic database terminologies before moving to the SQL concepts. Because if you are new to this database field or SQL field, then you will not be that much familiar with the various database terminologies like table and rows, what is alias and the schemas and all. So because if you are not able to understand or familiar with these terms or the terminologies, then later you will not be able to understand whenever we are using the terms. So today we'll be discussing about few of the basic database terminologies so that it will be clear to you throughout the course or throughout this tutorial, right? So now let's understand first what is database, right? So if you are familiar with the database or if you know what is database, then it's fine. Otherwise you can refer to this video or refer to this part. So a database is an organized collection of structured, semi-structured and the unstructured information or the data which are stored typically in the electronic format inside a computer system. So this is the definition. I know it is not clear to you at like first attempt or first go. Let me explain it to you in a layman term. So if you want to store water, what you will be using? You may use bottle or you can use bucket to store the water. So simply in order to store the data, we are using database, just in a layman term. So now let's understand what do we mean by structured, semi-structured and the unstructured data or the information. So for example, if you are working for a company, let's say XYZ company, right? So you are an employee of the to that specific XYZ company, and I am the HR, and I am just using a file system or just a Excel file to store the employee details. Like previously, they were using files, they were using pen and paper to store the employee details. So now I am using Excel sheet. So in the Excel sheet, I have the employee name or employee number and the employee address and employee phone number and the employee email address and the primary contact person, emergency contact person if something happens to you, right? So and I have 10 employees. So for employee 1, I am entering the details. For employee 2, I am entering the details. For employee 3, I am entering the details, so and so, right? So like this, I am storing the data for the various employees. So this is called as the structured data. That means we are storing the data in a row and column format. So generally tables is the row and column. So in the row and column format, I am storing the data. So this is called as the structured data. And the semi-structured data, what do you mean by it? So it is neither structured data and neither nor unstructured data. So later we will come to this part. But first now let's understand what do we mean by unstructured data. So for example, if you want to, like if I am giving you a layman definition of unstructured data, for example, we are having some meeting in our school, right? And the teachers have invited all the class students to a auditorium hall or the hall, right? So here there is no restriction that class 1 people students will be sitting here and class 2 people will be sitting there and class 10 people will be sitting there, right? There is no specific conditions or the terms we are applying here. Randomly people can sit together, boys, girls, and the class 2, class 5, class 6, class 7 and 10 people can sit at a one point, right? So this is the unstructured data. That means people are like it is heterogeneous kind of thing, right? So this is the definition of unstructured data. So it is not stored in an organized manner inside the database. It is not organized, but structured data are organized always. If you want me to give you an example, then here is the example. The log files were being generated while we are using any social media platforms, like if I am liking a post or liking a photo, or I am sharing this photo or commenting something, Then we are using some APIs or something to extract the data for a specific user, and we are just dumping the data inside a database or inside this database, right? So this is the unstructured data. It is not organized, it is not stored in a tabular format. So this is the definition of the unstructured data. And it is very much difficult to deal with the unstructured data because it is not in a proper manner or the proper format. First we have to make it in a proper format, then only you will be able to use it, or it needs a very like huge pre-processing before using it or analyzing it, right? And the structured data is one of the easiest data we have to like deal with. And basically in SQL we'll be dealing with the structured data because according to the definition of SQL only, it's a structured query language. I hope it is clear right now. Now let's understand few of the terminologies. As you discussed earlier, table, what do you mean by table? It's a relational database. Data is stored in the relational database. Data is stored in the tabular format, row and column, right? That's it. And schema. So it refers to the organization of the data as a blueprint of how database is constructed. So schema, let me give you an example here. So if you are studying in a college, or if you are working somewhere in a XYZ company, then they are having some certain rules and regulation. So you have to follow that specific regulation. Every employee needs to follow that specific regulation. So schema is something like that only. If you are having certain rules to the specific schema, then all the tables or the views, right now you will not be able to understand view, but just understand that view is similar to the table only, and views and the tables must follow that specific rules or the restrictions. This is a kind of blueprint or rule maker, you can say. Alia. So alia is just a simple short name we are giving to our table or the columns for it, like temporary name. It is not reflected in the database. For example, my name is Priyavrat and you can call me PV or something, right? So this is the simply alia. Like we are having the long table names. This employee underscore detail underscore date of birth underscore 2022. So it's a huge or the lengthy name. Instead of that, we can use hyphen 2022, right? So that you will be able to like easily can type and you can use later, right? So now let's understand what do you mean by unique key. So unique key is a combination of one or more columns which can uniquely identify a row in a table. So before discussing further, let me give you an example here. So suppose you are an employee, or you are a student in your class 10th standard. You are a 10th standard student, right? So how will be able to identify you that this guy is that specific guy we are looking for, right? By using his name we cannot identify because he might not be having the same name, right? Many people might be having the same name, right? So that's why unique key is something that uniquely identifies. Later we'll be discussing. But before that, what do you mean by null? So null in the sense like suppose this is the roll number column I have and I am passing null. That means simply empty. I am not passing anything to this column name, roll number, and that means it will not hold anything. So this is the meaning of the unique key. Sorry, this null. That means and the what do you mean by primary key? Primary key is a unique key, and the key cannot occur twice in a table. That means generally the primary key uniquely defines a entry or the row. That means in the class, if you are trying to identify a student by the help of his name, we cannot identify. As you discussed earlier, many people might be having with the same name, like Priyavrat. Many people will be there, right? But the roll number should be unique. Like in your class, have you ever seen that people are having the same roll number, right? Never. And also like in the companies also, one person must be having only one employee ID, and it must not be a null. That means null value you cannot take. But for in case of unique, we can pass only once the null value, right? This is the difference between primary key and the unique key. So what is the definition of the primary key? Unique and not null. Like later we'll be defining the primary key, but for the timing just understand that here in this table in the student table, the roll number is the primary key here, and the name is not primary key, and the mark also is not a primary key, because many people might be having the 95 mark or the 85 mark or the 90 mark. And also the if you argue with me, like, yes, the phone number is a primary key. Yes, the phone number can like we can take the phone number also as a primary key, or the email address also a primary key, right? All these things are the primary key, uniquely identified, and identifies the employee or the student. And also we can take the Aadhaar card number or the PAN card detail or the driving license. These are the uniquely identifies the candidate or the employee, right? Then the foreign key is a linking pin between the two tables. Like if you are trying to link the two tables, forget about the tables, if you are trying to link the two entities, then you will be looking to a certain point where you can join these two entities or the 2 points or two stuffs, right? So like this also foreign key helpful when we are trying to join the multiple tables. And the foreign key must be a primary key to another table. So here I have taken one example. This is the student table, and this is the student this is the this is the subject table, not student table, this is the subject table. And here this is the department table, department ID, that means the specific subject department. So here the for the student table, the roll number is the primary key as we discussed earlier. And here name, Priyabrat, Survi, and the Priyabrat, again two people are there, so that's why that means name is not a primary key. And mark is the primary mark is the marks we have achieved in this specific department, MPC, maths, physics and chemistry. So this is the subject table, and here in this subject table I have one ID column, that is maths, physics and chemistry, and the name of the name of the subjects are maths, physics and chemistry. So here ID is the maths, and here this is the math column, that means ID column is the department ID to this specific department table. That means this is the foreign key present inside in this student table, and it helps to join the student table and the department table or the subject table together. So that means department ID is the foreign key to the student table, and department ID or the simple ID is the primary key to the student table. That means foreign key must be a primary key to that specific table, otherwise it cannot be a primary key. Then the composite key. So what happens, for example, here I don't have any roll number column inside the student table. That means we don't have any primary key. That time what we can do, we can join or combine multiple columns together, name, mark, department, ID, or for example the address of that specific candidate and the primary contact person, and we can define or create one column. This is called as the composite key that uniquely defines or works as a primary key. If you don't have any primary key, then we can use the composite key. But generally in the in the projects or in this IT field or in this database like projects, we never use the composite key because it is very much complex and it is time taking, and also like primary key, instead that we can use only one key, that is primary key, and it can uniquely define the table. So this is all about the database terminologies, few of the keys I have discussed here. So later we'll be discussing about the upcoming videos, we'll be discussing about the few SQL concepts one by one. So in the next video we'll be discussing about the